Hi.
Hello. Hi, Julia.
What's your name?
Ian. Did I not put it down there?
Ian
Ian
Duncan.
Duncan. Yeah, that's me. Sorry, I'm
Great.
on I'm on the Vic Roto computer.
That's okay. I'm really glad that you're here. Thanks
Yeah,
for coming.
yeah.
It looks like we were going to have maybe 4 or 5 people.
Yeah, my wife Ann was going to be here, but we mixed up the time, forgot Eastern Daylight versus Pacific. We had it written down for 3 o'clock, and it's actually noon here. She's at the pool. She'll be back.
Oh my
And I know
God.
Calvin was going to be on, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Calvin's here. Hi, Calvin. Um, and I think Chris Southwick. Oh no,
Okay.
she's not coming today. Anyway, we'll wait another minute. So you are District 1, so you're in British Columbia.
Yes, in Victoria.
Nice.
Yes.
I'm jealous of you guys
Oh, yeah.
always.
Hello.
Hi, Calvin.
Hello. Hi, Calvin.
Hello.
Nice to see you. I'm Juliana.
Yeah, I remember you from was it Nanaimo you spoke a couple of years ago?
That
Yes.
was one of my favorite meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wrote down a lot of things from that meeting.
Well, maybe we all proved ourselves wrong since then, so we'll have to update you.
Uh-huh.
I was really interested in the size of the roots, how small rhodo roots are, that the size of them compared to a lot of other plants, and in taking up water into the leaves.
Yeah, and we just did another experiment that showed that they don't grow in response to drought, which most plants, you may know, they grow their roots when there's drought so they can get more water, but apparently
Mhm.
rhododendrons are a no on that. So might be a good reason why they're not very drought hardy.
Right.
I see Denise Winter and Virginia Griswold in here. Welcome. I think this is probably going to be it for the meeting, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I just want to tell you a little bit about what I want to do for the meeting. I just wanted to go around and ask each of you what your interest is. If you're here for a personal interest, I think maybe some people are kind of representing their chapter. So maybe we could just start off or their organization. So if we could just start off and you could let me know what are you looking for out of this? And then I can make sure as we go through our content that you're getting what you need. Um, let's see. Do you want to start, Ian, since you were first in the Zoom?
Hi. Even though it says District 1 Zoom on my name, I'm Ian. I'm using the club computer. Um, Probably for two things. Along with Calvin, we volunteer at the Horticultural Center of the Pacific with our big demonstration garden there. And so that's of interest. And then, yes, my own personal interest, big garden, lots of rhodos.
Great, great. How about you, Calvin? It sounds like you and Ian are a pair.
Yeah, yep. We maintain the Norm Todd Propagation Center. So uh, my interest is propagation and what works here and what doesn't. Um, but also when things are blooming, that caught my interest when I read that because there's great variability on Vancouver Island. So it's always interesting when things bloom.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Calvin. How about you, Denise? Oh, I can't hear you. There you go.
Yeah, we work with mainly the Mount Arrowsmith Rhododendron Society and Nanaimo Rhododendron Society, as well as sort of connected to all the island chapters, and have been doing a lot of propagation of our species rhodos in the last 5 years, mainly with the horticulture program that is currently in suspension. So we're not quite sure what's happening with that. But Christy Bellis is our plant records and curator. And she already does a lot of the phenology side of things, just in terms of taking photos and knowing dates. Um, and we just thought it would be a great opportunity to sort of like extend um, our research and just sort of be part of the program on Vancouver Island. So in terms of phenology. So
Great.
yeah.
Awesome. Welcome. How about you, Virginia?
I'm a master's student at the University of Georgia, so I'm here for like a personal interest. I'm also a part of the Azalea chapter.
Great.
So yeah, I study rhododendrons in my research as well, so I'm excited about that.
Well, you're going to be sorry you met me because now I'm going to stalk you and bug you for talks and stuff. So welcome. I love that we have a diversity of goals and interests and age ranges and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a presentation that we are currently showing to our volunteers. So we have a program here at Holden where we have plants tagged in our collections. And last year we had the volunteers for the first year monitor their phenology, and it was amazing and we loved it, and we said, well, we want more. So what we did is we decided that we would be able to share our system with other gardens, so people who have well-documented gardens, but then also make a system where anybody who just saw a rhododendron and took a photo would have a place to put it. So we're trying to reach all different levels. And this is a beta testing year. So what we want to do is we want to try out again since our revisions last year. And then we're going to roll it out to the world next year and like start promoting it and marketing it after we get the kinks out. We do have a paper that we're getting ready to submit that's going to be in Subaldia, which is Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh's journal. And so crossing fingers, it gets accepted. I don't expect it won't. But there'll be a paper that basically has all the resources together. So we think it's kind of a neat little package that people can share. Does anybody have questions to start before I show the presentation? You good? All right. So I think realistically, some of this stuff is going to be applicable to you and some of it is not. So do you see community monitoring of rhododendron presentation?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, let me slideshow. Oh, interesting. It won't let me do a slideshow. I love that. Okay, well, we're just gonna make it smiley size. Okay, so Catalina Valderrama is a student in my lab who started this program last year, and she's going to lead it this year. And then in the fall, she's going to graduate school in a PhD program. So it will be me leading it. You may see either of those names through the process. So one of the first things we want to do is just define what we mean by phenology. And this is a really amazing diagram that's going to be part of our paper. That is a drawing of the phenology of Rhododendron brachycarpum var. Fowleri. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But the idea is that phenophases, as you see, it kind of goes around like a clock. It's the timing of life events. And I know you guys are already looking at these things. So you already know that the swelling of the vegetative buds and the vegetative flushing, that those events are going like a cycle throughout the year. And so what we want to do is we want to monitor those life cycle events and when they happen over the really long term. So I have a really cool example that goes with the photo. This is a poster that's going to be available to anyone who wants it once the paper's published. And there was a program in Russia where they monitored rhododendron brachycarpum using camera traps. And it was really cool. They actually mostly use the camera traps to look at tigers. But they got some funding to look at this species. And this is actually a cool relict population. So normally it only occurs in Japan and Korea. So this was a really neat project that gives a really cool demonstration of how in depth someone who's actually a tiger biologist could do like a rhododendron phenology monitoring. And I think what I like about it is using this diagram, you could provide anyone the information they would need to see what the phases look like in this species. So what we do is normally we're going to go out and we're going to say, oh, what is the first day we see an event? And that's the date we're going to record as our data. Now, a lot of these phases are a little bit harder to define, but two phases that we're really interested in this year, which are really easy to define, are budding. We're calling it budding, and that's just when the first open flower appears on a plant. And then mass flowering, which is when the first fully open truss appears on the plant. So if you think about the climate sensitivity of rhododendron, which I think Calvin, you mentioned, that date when that first flower opens is going to be different depending on the weather. That's already known in rhododendron. And these data that they collected in Russia, they had a really cool data set that showed in 2023 they had no flowering. They had a complete reproductive failure. And that was the only year out of 9 years that they had a failure. So that's really interesting data, and we can correlate it with climate data. We can correlate it with pollinators. There's so many things you can do to understand how plants are responding to climate and climate change just by tracking the first day that you see something. Does anybody have any questions so far? Is this all tracking? I think you guys are already experts, so I like talking to the converted already, so that's good. So when you're thinking about doing this in a volunteer context, I will tell you throughout this, you're going to see some spelling that is actually, my student is from Colombia, so she's using sometimes Spanish spelling, so it might look misspelled. Responsibilities, I think. But what you need for volunteer training is you need a list of what you expect people to do. You need a checklist so that they can know to do each of the things every single time they go. You need training resources for them so they can look at materials and learn what they're doing, like that poster I just showed you. And then you need to have contact with your volunteers because they're going to have questions. I find that volunteers are often, they're more thoughtful than I am. And they will ask great questions. So having that contact is really good. And contact is partly what keeps people coming back to volunteer. So here's what we define in our garden as the volunteer responsibilities for this year. I'll show you a map in a minute. We make a very clear path on a map, and the volunteers have to walk around the path, looking for tagged plants and assessing if these different phases of phenology have occurred. We also have a pollinator visitors thing that is very loose right now. We're sort of like, if you see one, take a picture. So this year, that's sort of where we're going to live with the pollinator piece. It keeps coming up because everybody wants pollinators, but largely what I'm going to show you is really just phenology. Now, when I say look for tagged plants, what we did last year, because of our volunteers demanding it, we actually gave each volunteer ownership of a specific plant. And they visited the plant several times a week until the event they were watching for occurred. And this was extremely popular. The reason they demanded it is they felt they got to develop a relationship with the plant, and they loved that. And a lot of them asked to be allowed to continue watching the plant for additional phases, even though we only wanted the one flowering date. So I think in terms of garden visitors and engaging the public, I think this can get people coming back all summer to your garden. So I think it's a really, really, really excellent way to get people excited. And we've even talked about letting the volunteers name a plant. So, you could call a specific rhododendron ostrinum, you could call it Marge, after your grandma or something like that. So I think there's other models of this. We thought at first about just having all the plants tagged and having people just look for whatever was blooming. That might be better for a smaller collection, but our collection is pretty big. So that wasn't really feasible because it felt like everybody was going to be overlapping. After they find the plant that they're looking for and they say, oh, a thing is happening, today's the day, my flower's open. Then they're going to log their observations in an online form. And largely with the form we have, it's mostly taking a picture and then adding a little bit of information. And then one of the things we really actually found that was really delightful is that the volunteers would love to communicate with you about missing tags or plant damage. We had several plants removed or moved this last year due to the volunteers monitoring. So we do have a plant records curator who goes around and monitors all of our plants, but we have a lot of plants and he can only get to those occasionally. So we think this is actually a really, really cool framework for just assessing plant health in a more timely manner than maybe you can do with your staff too. And especially when you assign a plant to someone, they start to get to know what it looks like when it's happy and things like that. So we viewed this as actually a really neat opportunity. So we give them that instruction and ability to communicate with us. Hey, this plant looks, something stepped on it, or it's really yellow and it had no flowers. So that was really useful for us. All right, this is their checklist that they get. Park, and we tell them where to park. So we give them very specific instructions. You want to make sure to check your internet connection or bring paper forms. So we are amenable to some paper forms. Then we tell them now you're going to go through the path, look for your plants, and then find your plant and log it. And then if you see a pollinator, take a picture, upload it. We give our volunteers a parking permit. Actually, how they arrive at the organization as an official person is one of the things volunteers really want to know a lot about. And we actually have to spend quite a bit of time making sure that they feel like they're allowed to do things. For example, stepping in the beds. How do you step in a bed if you need to step in a bed to go to one of your plants? How do you do that thoughtfully? And then even one of the things is how do you speak to other visitors about what you're doing? So I don't know if you guys have ever been in a garden and been doing something, and I've had this happen quite a bit. People say, you're not allowed to do that. And I say, oh, I have permission. So we give them quite a bit of training on how to be sort of an official partner of the organization, I guess I would call it. So now I'm going to go into a little bit to the iNaturalist platform. Do you guys have any experience with this platform? It looks like Ian does, Denise. Calvin, have you worked with it before? Yeah, and Virginia? Okay, I will not belabor iNaturalist for you guys because in the end, it's pretty simple. We basically, this training is designed to really walk the volunteers who have never done it before through, like they download the app together. They show them like walk through using it and everything. So I think a lot of volunteers in nature programs are not very technologically interested. And so we find it's very common that they need quite a bit of help. So this is another spot where Catalina's got some Spanish text, but this is basically, she just walks them through all the things to click so they don't have to worry about it. And this is another slide. I don't know what she's doing there, but so one of the things we did is we gave them a QR code that they can scan to join our project. So that's one of the things that I would send to you guys. Let's just stop here for a minute. Before I go into the details of what we're recording, do you guys have any questions or thoughts or comments about what I just showed you? No, it's going good. Cool. So then the next thing, we just walk them through, after they've joined the project, we walk them through what it's like to make an observation. So at the heart of it, we're taking a photo of that event that is happening on that day. And as you know, the nice thing is it's time stamped, date stamped. So realistically in your collections, having a photo often could be enough, even if you missed other data. And then we walk them through how we add that observation to a project. So first you have to generate a name or at least an idea of a name. And then you go to projects and you can click on our project and share that observation in our project. The project is open for anyone in the world to join. And any observation that's uploaded to iNaturalist that fits our criteria could be pulled into our project. So the project isn't meant to be private. I think for organizations, perhaps like Milner, or other things, there are ways that this information can be kept personal. One way is that you could collect the data you want and then put what you want in here. So I think especially for gardens and organizations that are monitoring bigger collections, I think what we want to do is just work with you guys, figure out what your needs and interests are, and then we would go through a similar process with you to design what your volunteers are doing in the project, how it's showing up online and all that. So we do have a little bit of flexibility to make sure that it's fitting the needs that you want. Importantly, all the pictures and the data on iNaturalist, as you may know, are available for anyone to use. So if you want your pictures to be proprietary, you may not want them necessarily. A record doesn't have to contain a picture. It can just be a paper, just a written record. Those are sort of viewed as less valuable if you don't know the person collecting the record. The photo is really comforting because you're like, there it is. A photo is a great data point, but in the context where you have really high confidence that you're entering records correctly without a photo, those kinds of records can be accommodated as well. We have really big, bright special tags that go on our plants that are being monitored. This was actually a conflict with our horticulturalists last year because they said our tags were really ugly. And we had to make a change. So we went with this is going to be a metal tag that we're going to get this year, and it's going to look similar to our accession tag. So it will look like a more professional tag, and it will be permanently affixed there. This is an example of what the questions that we ask in the form. We just ask, what did you see? So species ID, if any. If a person doesn't know, they can just put rhododendron. I think for collections, you can basically make very clear, when you have good IDs in collections, you can go ahead and add your really robust ID. We do, as collections managers, I think we often know how good some of our IDs are. So you may have some plants that you're like, we'll just call that a rhododendron. And I'll get to that in a minute, why that matters. And then this is a standard iNaturalist question. They want to know if it's in nature or if it's cultivated. So as you may know, iNaturalist is really meant for nature, but we're going to co-opt it for our plant collections, and we don't mind. We're perfectly happy to do that. I've been in projects on iNaturalist before where they will not allow a collections tag to be an ID. But we will allow that. I think we believe strongly that collections managers are good at tagging their plants. I think for home gardeners, that's going to depend on who the person is. So one of the things you can do as a project leader is when someone makes an ID, you can actually retract it back and say, oh, that's maybe just a rhododendron, right? So I think we're going to try to be really cognizant of the level of skill of ID. And one of the things I'll tell you about is the verification process. Then you have to enter a date. You have a space to enter notes if you want. The iNaturalist app will provide coordinates automatically. So location data might include your garden location or bed that you're looking at. And then the phenology section basically asks, what life stage are you looking at? And that's really gonna pretty much be adult or juvenile for us. I think maybe even in the beta phase, we might discuss that adult rhododendrons have flowers. Good question to debate. Maybe juveniles don't, I'm not sure. And then there's the phenophases that we identified. This year, we are only asking our volunteers to do budding and mass flowering, which I think is a good start. This is what we've got so far for pollinators. Did you see a bee, a wasp, a fly, a moth, a butterfly, or a bird? You may know that identifying pollinators from photos is actually pretty difficult. You can get to sort of the scale. I saw a bee. Um, but we think that if we can do this for a while, what we'll do is we'll get enough information to make a better pollinator monitoring program. So we're just going to let this ride a little bit with this sort of very loose pollinator module, and then hopefully we'll learn more and we'll be able to grow in the next couple of years. I will say that pollinators are more broadly appealing than flowers. I know you're plant people, so that hurts. But in a public, like community science sphere, pollinators are one of the hottest words that people want to hear. So it behooves us to at least have pollinators in there loosely and then think about how we can grow it. Um, we found that our volunteers really were worried about finding the plants in the beginning, so we marked all the beds with these hideous yellow flags. And then our gardeners said, please don't do that. It turned out if you walk your volunteers around, they are fine and they don't need hideous yellow flags. Especially if you assign each person, we assign them each about 10 plants. So it's easy for a person to locate their 10 plants and feel comfortable navigating to those plants without too much signage. This is a map of our collections where we're monitoring. So I think it's 50 acres. It's actually a pretty big garden. And so our volunteers are walking quite a bit. What we try to do is we try to give volunteers plants that are going to bloom across the season. So we give each person something that blooms in March, April, May, whatever. And we also try not to make one person the only person who walks too far. So it's a little bit of like, combinatorics, figuring out who to dole out the different plants to. And then sometimes you have volunteers that have special requirements, and so you dole them out a little bit differently right there. But we give them, the red line is the map and the yellow dots are the locations of all the observed plants. So this can be generated so that each volunteer can get a list of the plants that they're going to and take that map and know which plants they're responsible for. I really liked this because I think giving people ownership also makes it so you don't miss anything. So it was a really nice system that we were kind of surprised that worked better than we expected. And we liked that it was a volunteer-driven suggestion. So this is an example of a map. Frankly, I don't know how this map is different. This is what happens when you have amazing students and they give you a nice presentation. We'll just move on. That's the parking area. So the red square, I remember I mentioned people get nervous about what they're doing and where they're parking and things like that. Then we let them know there's these resources for you. We're going to have the online forms. We're going to have the map. We're going to have the parking permit. We give them an official start date. We're starting actually later this year. We've got some doricum that'll probably bloom before then. But we're starting the 13th just for our own needs. And then we just give them the contact information. And that's it. So that is what I have to show you guys. And I think maybe for the rest of the time, maybe we could just talk about each person could give me an idea of where you're at after seeing that, what you think I might be able to do to share information with you to help you get involved. Do you want to just go in the same order we went on my screen with Ian starting first? And
Well,
Calvin, maybe you guys want to pair up.
we have different thoughts and ideas on things. Couple of things I can see presenting it to our club members to get them more involved in a couple of the gardens that we support
Yes.
very, very easily. So that would work. And then also at the Horticultural Center, the Pacific, we're also the Pacific Horticultural College with hort students. And they're there for a program that runs from February through November every year. And I'll talk
Great.
to the curriculum on that because that may may line up with their hort studies, and that'd be a good boost for rhododendrons and something for the students to really get involved in.
That's great. All we'd really need to do is generate a map for each location, and then we could zhuzh this presentation
Yeah.
so that it fits for that
Mhm.
location. Um,
We also have
okay.
300 volunteers in the garden.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, but it's a horticultural garden of all sorts of different gardens, people in lilies, people in roses, people in this and things. So, but it
Yeah,
might get them involved more in our aspect of things. Get them out of their little garden elsewhere in the big garden.
that's great. You know what? One of the things that's actually a bit time consuming is the tagging. So it may be that you might want to think about leveraging some volunteers to do the tagging as well, because that takes it takes about a half a day to tag the plants. So 10, if you give 10 per volunteer, I don't know if you have 3,000 plants. But
Yeah,
anyway, I think we'd have to think about how you implement that. Like, how many plants do you want to give each person? How many plants total do you want to tag? Do you just want to monitor everything and you don't have to tag stuff?
every plant is tagged already.
Yeah, yeah. So we use these tags. We have tags on all our plants, but one of the problems is often our accession tags actually go with a clump and not an individual.
Hmm.
So you don't have that problem. I'm going to call our
Mhm.
collections guy. Okay, good. I think that sounds great. So, what about you, Calvin? What are your thoughts along those same lines?
Yeah, and until I get in there and do some identifying and that, I'm not exactly sure, but Ian's idea is pretty good there. Um, yeah,
Awesome. Well, that would be really easy for us to facilitate getting these materials worked up so that they would just be transferable.
yeah.
And I'd be
Yeah.
happy to give a talk for any of the garden clubs. And I think what we need to do, Ian, you mentioned wanting to do your own garden. I think we need a presentation like this that's for I'm doing my own garden,
Mhm.
perhaps. Do you think that would be useful?
I think so. That'd be good as a club presentation to our Roto Club
Yeah.
because some of them have big gardens and some have small gardens. And
And Ian just is working on a fabulous map of the whole garden, which everybody is happy to see.
Awesome.
We,
Awesome.
we've
That's
we've
great.
got the mapping, or Ian's got the mapping done already, so it's great.
That's wonderful. I love that. Awesome. Okay, how about you, Denise?
Yeah, we're sort of similar with HCP. In terms of like we already have the plant labels, we have 250 volunteers, and working closely with the Roto societies. That there's definitely yeah, a possibility. Um, and I think that would be good to connect with the island chapters of the Rhododendron Society,
Yeah.
and maybe do like a large scale Zoom presentation. Um, the conference is here in a couple weeks. And so definitely I can talk to, I mean, Chris Southwick is probably your best connection anyways, for
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah.
Chris did sign up to watch the recorded video.
Okay.
Oh no, I
Okay.
didn't record it. Oh
Oh,
no.
no.
Oh, it is recording.
Okay.
Yay, I set
Yeah.
it to
yes,
automatic.
you
Good
did.
job, me. Okay. Well,
And
Denise,
then
oh,
yeah,
go
and I
ahead.
think what I'm curious is what kind of scope, like do you have sort of a program that you're following, or is it sort of just I would probably we'd probably talk internally about where we wanted to focus the phenology. Um,
So, yeah, I think I'm a species biologist, so that's where my heart lies. And I think from a lot of perspectives, that's where the data is going to be most desired by researchers.
right.
But I think monitoring hybrids is equally valuable, and I don't see any reason to not do it.
Yeah. Okay.
I think monitoring hybrids is fantastic. And I think within the project on iNaturalist, um, I think that the hybrids are the biggest problem in terms of ID.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I think it gets harder and harder to really do a good ID for a lot of home gardeners. So I think one thing that we want to do is I think I'd love to talk about how we do hybrids and what we're doing. I think you get a lot of hybrid plants on iNaturalist already, so they're there. So yeah, I think hybrids are equally valuable, and even from a species biology perspective, one of the things I really like about rhododendron is you can actually take the breeding structure and use it as hypothesis for genetics. So you could get data on the two parents of a hybrid and the hybrid, and then you can actually do some really outrageously cool science with that. So I think that's something that I've been talking up in rhododendron for the whole time I've been around. Like, oh, it has this great, really good breeding history. It really gives you that opportunity to look at what does mixing up the genetics do and how does parentage matter. So I think there's a lot of relevance for the hybrids. I think we're going to be the people to bring people to understand that. I think often in the science community, people don't want to think about hybrids at all in biology.
Right.
But I'm a person that's going to be the advocate, and I think if we can start having a really cool data set,
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting for us because we do have that with our species garden where we have both parents and then the hybrid. And the way the species garden has been set up is as you enter, we have two specific examples of that with the rhododendrons nice and close. So you have both parents or grandparents, and then you have the hybrid. So that would be an interesting focus for us, I think.
I
Yeah,
love that. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that's very cool. Well, I think maybe specifically for the gardens, what we'll want to do is maybe have just another meeting where we talk about your specifics and I can sort of write down what we need to prepare. And then I think for the clubs, I'm going to prepare just a general your garden talk. So I'll start getting that ready. Virginia, what do you want to talk about?
Um, so I was thinking on the science side of it, there's a few labs at UGA that study rhododendron. So I could share this with them and also my chapter with the Rhododendron Society. My chapter, though, there's quite a few members that have their own gardens, so I can see like both side of it, like people having their own gardens, how that would work, and then the more like cultivated side of things as well. But yeah, I already have a few students working with me, and I can easily see this like being incorporated into my own research and labs at UGA too.
That's awesome. You're also in an area where a lot of people go out in nature and look for azaleas. So it would be fun to think about how we identify those folks. They're already adding observations to iNaturalists. So how can we suck them into our project type of thing and encourage more of that? So cool. Awesome. Um, do you guys have any other questions or thoughts?
No.
Good. Okay, good. I'm done. Covered it all.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't I do this? Other people are going to watch this on Zoom on the recording, including Chris Southwick. Michael O'Hara is another person that signed up. Maybe you guys are familiar with from the area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send everybody an email that basically goes through what we've talked about and what we're going to offer in terms of like creating a new presentation, helping gardens with collections, zhuzh our plan so that it fits their circumstances and things like that. Does that sound good? Yeah,
Yes.
good. Thank you guys for coming. This is so much fun and I'm really, really excited. It sounds like we've got so many different types of people here that are going to be potentially involved. So this is very cool.
Potential.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
it's sort of like a party. You have a party and you think, well, only half the guests are going to come. So even the
Yeah.
RSVPs, maybe 10% of the RSVPs are going to drop out. So anyway, thank you guys. I'm going to be in touch.
Good. Thank you.
Have a beautiful
Thank you.
Yep.
day. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.